I work for Temple University. I'm at the Hope Center for College, Community, and Justice, and I am the Director of Research Application and Dissemination there, which essentially means that my job is to take the research and data and findings from the lab, from the center, and we take that and we turn it into things like Beyond Financial Aid, tools that practitioners can use, that leadership can use, that policymakers can use to make decisions about students' lives. And so I'm here to talk a little bit today. I really appreciate the invitation to speak. Thank you so much, Lumina Foundation, for putting this event on, for putting all of this together. Thank you for folks that are on live stream. Nice to see you. I'm going to do my best to remember you're here. Not too much, though. It makes me a little nervous, not going to lie. One of the things that I have done in my career is I founded the College and University Food Bank Alliance. So when we talk about the notion of having a pantry on a campus to serve students, that was something that a colleague of mine at Michigan State University envisioned. We developed this capacity building organization, and we have spent hours on the phone with leaders and students talking about what they need to do in order to start a pantry. And I will say that when Beyond Financial Aid came out, it made my life a lot easier because I could point to a document and say, here are some steps you can take to figure out what you need to do to help your students be successful. And when I think about the thing that is most meaningful to me, I think about the focus on knowing your students. So the first strategy, you need to understand your students. You need to know their needs to actually meet them. So close your eyes for a second, and I want you to imagine being inside of somebody else's head, okay? We are a group of people who spend a lot of time thinking about students. We think a lot about higher ed and success. I want you to imagine somebody who makes decisions about students' lives who may not know what students' lives are like. Now imagine what they would think of when they think of a student. Okay? I'll give you just a second. All right. If you go ahead and open your eyes, I have a slide up that has a picture of a student here. How many of you thought in your head, that's kind of what people would be imagining when they think of a student? A lot of folks, when they think of students, they're thinking of students in four-year colleges. They're thinking of students who are 18 to 22 years old. They're thinking about students who are white, they're cisgender, their parents are helping them pay for school. They might be getting financial aid, but financial aid is covering everything for them. I kind of tricked you a little bit, though, because we don't actually know if any of those things are true about the student. When we look at the student, we don't know if the student's male identified. We don't know if the student's at a 2- or 4-year school. We don't know if the student identifies as white. We don't know a whole lot about the student. We don't know if those Nike shoes that student is wearing were a gift, or if they came from a thrift store, if they were a hand-me-down. So it's really important for us to take the time to ask and to look. We truly do need to know our students. And when we think about our students, and this is something that was already covered, thank you very much for talking a little bit about it. No, it's great. It's great. It means I can hit on other things. We know that more than half of them are women. We know that over a third of them are at 2-year public colleges. And the number was 57% on the other slide. I want to acknowledge that this is full-time students, not necessarily inclusive of part-time students. Increasingly, we're seeing students of color coming to campuses. As a matter of fact, the number of students in the last 20 years who identify as Black or African American has increased by 72%. So we're seeing more students of color. It's not enough. That's a big number. It can be used improperly. But I do know that what we're seeing is that we're seeing a larger range of students of color coming to campus. Nearly 40% of them are over the age of 25. So we're seeing older students. We call them non-traditional, but I would argue that that's an outmoded term. A third of them are first generation. So we have a lot of students coming to campus, and when we talk about those students, we also talk about them as not having something. They're lacking social capital. They're lacking the information. They're not prepared. And what we need to do when we think about these students is we actually need to think, these students are bringing things we're just not ready for yet. We aren't prepared for them. Nearly half of them are financially independent. This goes back to the fact that we have a lot of adult students coming, but we also have a lot of students in that quote-unquote traditional age set that are also financially independent. Anyone want to take a guess as to why? Any thoughts? Yeah?
Parents?
Their parents. Yes, they are parents. They have children. Yes. Yeah, they're coming from foster care. They're coming out of the military. They're coming out of the closet. So their parents may not be accepting of them. They may be independent, not by choice, more by chance. So there's a lot of things that students are dealing with. As you said, a quarter of them have children. And the other thing is they're dealing with real life challenges. And those are around money, those are around identity, and all of these different things that, again, I don't think we're always prepared to be working with them on. So we've done some research looking at the struggles that students are dealing with, and particularly looking at their basic needs, which often are separated out from their academic needs. I want to challenge folks to start thinking today about the fact that students' academic needs and their financial needs and their basic needs are all one big pile of needs, and that any one of these could push a student to need to drop out, stop out, or maybe increasing their likelihood that they won't persist or graduate. 36% of university students and 42% of community college students were food insecure in the past 30 days in a study that we released called Still Hungry and Homeless. We released it this year. We surveyed 43,000 students at both 2- and 4-year institutions, and this is one of the things we found. Another is that 36% of university students and 47% of community college students were housing insecure in the past year. So we're looking at students who are not necessarily getting enough to eat, they're not able to eat nutritiously, they're not able to take care of themselves, and often their children, if they have them, are also food insecure. We also are finding that students don't necessarily have a safe or stable place to live. This could mean a lot of different things. It could mean that they live in the residence halls and then the halls close and they don't have anywhere to go. It could mean that there's couch surfing. It could mean that they are, as I often came across when I worked at Oregon State University, there would be 10 students living in a 2-bedroom house. So at any given time in our town, the housing authority could be notified and 5 of those students would have to leave or more. So students' situations aren't always as stable as we'd like them to be. And what we found is that 9% of university students and 12% of community college students were homeless in the last year. Now, when I talk about that notion of couch surfing, I'm going to put that out there that those students are experiencing homelessness. And I have had to couch surf in my life. And I'll tell you right now, it's really hard to focus. It's really hard to study, particularly if you don't have a key. So you have to come and go when the people that you're staying with come and go, and you end up living their lives, not your own. It's not conducive to students being successful. So we have to listen to students' voice. We need to hear them talk, and I'm really excited to hear from the students today. I honestly think that's way more important than anything I have to say. We need to be hearing from our students. It's part of what it means to know them. We have to ask. We are actually involved in a national campaign right now, trying to collect student stories. We want to understand who today's students are, and the best way to do it is to ask them. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of today's students. This is Mary. Mary has worked with us at the Hope Center. She graduated from Community College of Philadelphia 2 weeks ago. Yeah, Mary's a badass. We love Mary. Mary was a former foster youth. She got dropped off at Penn State with nothing but a trash bag. Not really conducive to success. She was not necessarily given the support she needed, and people didn't really understand her situation. She didn't make it at Penn State. And to survive, she did a lot of different things, and one of those was illegal, and she ended up in prison. And so as a returning citizen, she went back to community college, and she's actually earned 2 degrees. So Mary's life, a little bit different than what people are thinking about when they think about today's student. Susan is another one of today's students. We actually met Susan, I met Susan for the first time last week at Boston at an event at Bunker Hill Community College. And Susan is a veteran. She had to leave her military service because she had a disability. She decided to go to school, and she's now the student body president. And she's a fierce advocate for students. And I'm really happy to say that Susan got into Stanford, which is just extremely excited. And we were able to give her high fives, and we were able to hear from her. And one of the things she talked about was the fact that really the idea of struggle was ubiquitous across the board at her institution. So although she was the one stepping up and speaking, she really felt like she was speaking for a lot of people. And she took that responsibility very seriously. John's a student that I met when I was at Amarillo College in Texas. John told me a really long and very detailed story about his life. He's 53 years old. He's studying photography. He is looking to try and start his own business. And he's actually receiving a lot of different supports because he has a disability and he has AIDS. And he actually spent about 8 years sitting at home doing nothing. And he wasn't sure what he wanted to do. So finally, he started getting into photography as a window into his life to let people in. And in letting people in, they brought him into the community on campus. He sought counseling while he was in school, and he actually wasn't able to continue it because his campus only allowed a certain amount of counseling before he had to pay. So it's a significant challenge for a lot of students because we need to remember that they're dealing with a lot of things that are hidden. And we may not understand them. We may not know what's going on with their identities. We may not know what's going on with their lives. John is today's student. Esperanza is also today's student. She's a mother, and she's an activist. And she actually reached out to us recently because she actually went out on her campus. She took her campus map. She went out and she found out where all the food, housing, toiletries, all the different things that a student who is either hungry or homeless might need. And she superimposed them over the map. And she's been providing it as a resource for students. And we're actually working with her right now to see if we can do that on other campuses across the country. So students, they're not just sitting there being victims. They're actually stepping up. And when we talk about those students in Michigan, when we talk about students at Spelman and Morehouse, students are fired up about this, and they are trying to do what they can. And again, it's really important for us to know who they are and not think about them as victims of this situation, but as partners in trying to address it. Devon is actually a friend of my partner's. My partner is a massage therapist. We live in Raleigh, North Carolina. And Devon went back to school because he, as a first-generation student, was told, you need to go to college. Just go. Just go. You'll figure it out. Take out the loans, do all the things. Just go and finish school. And so he did it, which is really impressive considering all of the different hurdles and financial challenges that he had. But he walked away with a lot of debt, and he walked away without a job. And he looked and he searched and he found that really he wasn't able to do that. So he went back to school and he's getting a credential, a licensure in massage, and he's actually apprenticing underneath my partner. And so I was talking with him, and this is what he told me. He said, my undergrad was absolutely useless. And so I went back for massage because I realized that's going to get me a job. And so when we think about today's student, they're not all seeking a degree. When they show up on a campus, we shouldn't be calling them the class of X. We shouldn't necessarily be thinking about them as having a major. They may have a focus. They may be seeking a credential. There may be something entirely different that their goals are. And when we use that language and we think about the different things that we talk about when we talk about students, we may be excluding a student like Devon, who is really excited and actually really good at massage. So if you come to Raleigh, I'll hook you up with him. The takeaway I have for you today is that today's student requires today's solutions. So that's why we need things like Beyond Financial Aid. It's why we need the Hope Center to be doing research and studying the student experience. We need to be able to address the students' needs as defined by the students. We need to ask them what it is. There's actually a campus that's done this. And as I mentioned, John, one of the students I was talking about, I met him at a college in Amarillo, Texas. Amarillo College is a really special place. And their president has taken great pains to try and understand the students. He buys a student a lunch once a week, doesn't tell them he's the president, just says, hey, can I get you lunch? And in the conversation says, what do you wish your college president knew? And he gets really honest answers. And he lets students know that he's going to do something about it. They send students out as secret shoppers across the campus to sort of go into offices and talk about what their experience was like there. And they pass that feedback on. And they do it in a way that's constructive because they want the students to have a great experience. And one of the things they've also done is they've looked at their data and they've talked to their students and they've actually reframed what the typical AC student is. So when they talk about their student, they talk about Maria. Maria is Hispanic, she's church-going, she's a mom, she's over the age of 25, she's working while she's in school. And if you hear Dr. Larry Hart talk about Maria, he does it with such love. And it is an institution that uses the word love when they think about and talk about their students. And so he will say, I want to introduce you to Maria, and Maria is amazing. So as we think about today's students, and we think about the challenges that these students are facing, I think it's really important for us not to approach it from that deficit. We need to understand their challenges, but we need to know that students are separate from their challenges. Maria is amazing, Devon is amazing, John is amazing, Mary, Susan, they're all amazing, Esperanza. But I think it's really easy for us to get bogged down in, these are the problems and we need to solve them. So students need to be engaged as partners, we need to talk with them and we need to ask them, and we need to know their experiences. And it's really important for us to then use that information to make decisions. Not just our own decisions, but to help inform the decisions of others. So if you're anything like me, you probably were Googling the Hope Center for College Community and Justice as soon as I said it. I don't know if anybody did that. You're not going to find a whole lot. We are not technically open. We will be opening this fall in September at our own conference, which is called Real College. And I'm really excited for the work we're going to be doing. I'm excited for the work that Lumen is doing. And I really am excited for this event today. I appreciate everybody's attention, and I can't wait to hear from the students, to be honest. So thank you.